As a community, all of us, are we doing enough?
I think everybody has the ability to give back. It doesn't matter if you are a millionaire or you are broke. You can do something to help your community. Literally, those random acts of kindness, those small things that you can do, can create a ripple effect. And so there's really no act that is too small.
How can we, as a community, help you?
Well,
And it would have been mine if it hadn't been for those meddling kids.
Welcome to another episode of the Full Gambit podcast. And today we're going to be talking about philanthropy, the future of philanthropy. And I have I can't say two good friends of mine. One is a good friend. The other one, I'm actually just married to. I don't know.
it's that one.
Yeah. In 2023, let's clarify. Wow. That's where we are. But that's another conversation for another day. Sharleen, Hanson, and Lucas Metropolis, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
This is your first time on my podcast.
Yes, it is.
And this is your first time on my podcast.
My first time. I'm privileged.
Let's have some fun. Philanthropy. A lot of people, especially Bahamians, they think of it as a luxury thing. Is it or is it not?
I think everybody has the ability to give back. It doesn't matter if you are a millionaire or you are broke. You can do something to help your community. So while it might not always be classified as philanthropy in the sense of donating money to a cause, I think every single person has the ability to do something, whether that's even picking up a piece of trash on the street or bringing hot breakfast to your elderly neighbor. So I don't think there is any excuse for anybody not having the time or the ability to help in some type of way to build their community.
Yeah, and I also think that a lot of people do philanthropic acts without even realizing it, like just going throughout their day.
Okay.
Like a lot of people associate philanthropy with just money, like you said, and there are, you might have a 10-year-old kid who is, sees someone struggling, someone thirsty, has some water, goes gives them water. That's a philanthropic act that they're doing.
So just an everyday kind deed.
Philanthropy doesn't have to be just cash. You always refer it to giving big donations, et cetera. And like Sharleen said, it's like I've been fundraising now for at least a decade or longer. And, one of my favorite gifts that I've gotten actually was from a kid for the community center we built here in Nassau.
Okay.
They did a spaghetti dinner as we were wrapping up the fundraising for the center. They did a spaghetti dinner. Each family came and gave $1. $1. And they all came in. That was one of the most meaningful gifts. Obviously, I'm appreciative of all the bigger gifts we got. But that gift of 100 people coming forward with $1 each and the child handing me an envelope with 100 ones in it, I was like, that is really cool. Like, to me, that is like,
that's the heart of philanthropy.
Yeah.
Nandahan, Bahamas. What exactly is it and where did it come from? Because one day it was here and it was everywhere and then it became headline news. Like, where did it come from? Who started it? Tell me about it.
Yeah. So it's kind of an interesting journey, but to say it really quickly, I had come to Nassau for the first time in 2007. Just started coming more, visiting family, friends. And then in 2012, I was introduced to the area of downtown called Grantstown through Valentino Brown and some others. Scrooge. And asked to run a marine science summer camp. So I ran that for a week. Every day we're walking around the community, playing basketball, running the camp. And he showed me all this really vibrant community, historic community, amazing kids. And he told me how, it would be so great to have more programs like the one I was running in this community. And there were a lot of one-offs, here and there, back to school drives, things like that. But I didn't see much consistency. And if I did, it always was specific to one thing. And not that people had agendas, but it was very, we're going to do it this way.
Right.
And we're not open to new ideas from other people. We're not open to collaborations. And so that's kind of lend a hand. Like, I really took that, met up with different people like Ed Dorset at the time and George Malis, Sheila Pritchard, Mitzi Ann Irving, sorry. And
excuse me, put some respect on that lady's name.
and brought everyone kind of together. And my role was really as a facilitator, helping just bring other people from across the island, from abroad, but mostly here to come forward and be part of that effort. And then, fundraising that first community center, and now, looking to fundraise the rest that we need for the second center and even the third property we have to increase.
There's a
reach.
third property?
There is, yes. That one
Where?
is pretty new, 1 block away on Hay Street. So that one's going to be all focused on culinary. We're actually dropping a 20-foot hydroponic grow pod at that location. So it's going to be a bit of a farm to table experience for some of the kids. But yeah, it really started as a group of concerned individuals. I wish I had all the money in the world to build it myself at the time, but I didn't. I was 21 and just worked to bring people together. And since then, after, multiple disasters like Hurricane Dorian, obviously with COVID-19.
And I want to talk about COVID because you guys did a lot of work during COVID.
Yeah. And it was, a lot of people coming together just to make a difference. And Sharleen has been on the board and she's been amazing, offering great feedback. I remember when you were pregnant, when we did the toy giveaway. Yeah. Jay, you were there too.
Yeah. And
helping with the photography. Thank you. But Sharleen, you're up there pregnant, giving away toys. And the whole time, you were probably freaking out too, but I was freaking out.
Yeah, I kind of was, yeah. But she can handle herself.
Yeah.
Hopping off and on the truck. Like, let's stay one place, woman. No, but let's talk about your work during COVID. Obviously, Dorian was one thing, and then you guys do a lot with literacy in the community with the kids after school at the center. What was providing help during COVID like? What was some of the good stories, some of the bad stories? Give me the experience.
I mean, the real idea behind Lend a Hand is always to give a hand up, not a handout. So it definitely was a different experience in terms of having to do food packages and things like that. Now, I was not really on the ground at the time, and I think you were not really even able to travel.
Yeah.
But between Sheila and Mitzi and the team at the center, there was a ton of volunteers.
There's a ton. And there's also expanded staff that happened, expanded donation. But we were at the peak, we were feeding over 50,000 people a week for about 6 months or so.
50,000?
Yeah, it was over about 2 years, but at its peak, it averaged, maybe 20 or 30,000 on average. But then it jumped tremendously after about a year into it, where we had to expand. And we had mostly the downtown city area, which, you always look at programs like that and you're like, of course, it's always easy after the fact to look back and criticize this.
Everything in retrospect, right?
But for me, I did go on the ground twice during that period, 3 times during that period of time, and I helped from afar on the data side. But going on the ground and seeing people's faces, people were truly desperate. These were not people just trying to game the system. There was that.
Of course, taking advantage.
People trying to get a second bag, third bag, and we cracked down a lot on that. And Mitzi Ann definitely cracked down a lot on that. But really you saw the desperation in people's faces, and you saw the impact that it did have. And to me, I think it was good that everyone stood up and helped in that way, and the donors came forward from all over. And we were getting donations from people I've never even heard of, but they were all people that were concerned about the Bahamas, concerned about what was happening with all the layoffs. And coming out of that, it was good because we expanded so much where we saw this whole area downtown where we met. It was over 13,000 households. And so we connected with so many families. We heard their problems. We saw some of the issues that now we're able to look at that and think about that. And as we look at programming, we're able to think, okay, like I can tell you right now how many houses in Angliston, for example, have running water. In Grandson, I can tell you who has a computer or not, who has electricity or not, how many kids are in the house, is there a disability, does someone have a disability in the home, where are the single parents, for example, that might need extra support. So that is really going to help us. And this was all internal stuff that we worked on going door to door.
Because I was going to ask you the data, collecting all that data. Are there any other agencies that may collaborate with you that are interested in having that data and using it in a positive way to impact, to kind of correct some of those deficiencies?
Yeah, our data was more so separate from the whole Feeding Task Force program. That was its own data set. I'm not talking about that, but we did our own surveying of the community, and this was all them giving us that information. And yeah, I think it's a lot of opportunity. I mean, for me, it's great to be able to pull those stats out to go to donors and say, okay, you want to make sure that there's clean drinking water in every home, or people have running water to be able to bathe. You want to do a well water project, whatever. We're able to actually have a real stat and not just say, hey, I need $25,000 to go, if we install some electrical fixtures, a lot of kids could study at night. Like where, who,
Right.
when, versus we're able, and we were able to do that beforehand too, but now I'm just saying that our reach got even bigger. We're hoping to collaborate with more groups and even other charities. And that's one thing that came out of the whole period while we were feeding was a lot of collaboration among nonprofits. We had 8 different locations that we distributed from. Some were churches, some were other centers. And so we also formed this kind of network that during a time of disaster might be called again.
Okay. Knock on wood for sure. Now, coming out of COVID, so we're in that, I think we're done with the post-COVID era. So I think we're in the reset. Obviously, certain problems still persist, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where are you now with that new programming, trying to fill in those gaps? I know there's a huge deficiency in literacy because there are a lot of gaps. Kids were missing school. They didn't have the tablets or the internet or the electricity to go online. Like, where are you guys now kind of fighting that fight with new programming?
It's funny that you say like, oh, the kids didn't have tablets, but yeah, ultimately, like if you think about Maslow's hierarchy, like if kids don't even have a safe place to sleep at night, or you have kids saying, oh, it's too hot to sleep because we either keep the windows open and let the roaches in, or we keep the windows closed and it's too hot because we don't have a fan running. So you have that issue where sometimes you just have to address the actual needs first, and giving a kid a tablet isn't going to fix that problem. The center addresses a lot of the needs because they can come consistently to have mentors, to have a safe place to go, to have resources, to have one-on-one teaching and classes and opportunities that they wouldn't otherwise get. Right now there's over 200 kids enrolled in the summer program, to the point like there's literally not enough space to house all those people. Like Mitzi's had to kind of find other opportunities for the kids who are kind of in the overflow to go to different camps because they literally cannot house everybody who's interested, which is awesome that there's so much interest in the program and that there's such a good name associated.
But there's still on the other side that there's such an abundant need.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, and that's what happened too after the whole feeding program was everyone knew about us. Mm-hmm. So we're getting requests like crazy on Facebook saying, hey, I know you also do some, I saw your pictures, I saw you do. Could my kids sign up? And it's terrible for us to be like, of course we want you to be part of this, but there was just so many. And now even with September coming, like Mitzi's worried because there's definitely gonna be a big spike in who wants to come. And our center is only 2,500, 3,000 square feet max, cannot fit, 150 kids at one time. Luckily with the other 2 buildings that we're, still raising a little bit of money for to finish, like we will have close to $10,000 square feet overall,
okay,
to be able to run programs simultaneously. And it's funny because like we started with just the kids, and actually what happened was because the kids would come after school during the school year, we have a lot of parents and senior citizens that actually would come during the day. They'd say, hey, we're here. Some were unemployed or some were staying home, and the seniors were just mostly shut-ins who were like, hey, it'd be great to do something and be part of and many of them, it's great to have them involved too during the day sometimes. They're also, leaders of the community. They have grandkids, some kids. And so having them bought into what we're doing only reinforces it to the kids.
Okay.
Because you'll have grandma yelling at the kids, like, did you go to the program today and do your tutoring? So that's been great as well to have all of them involved.
Speaking about the older generation trying to influence and push the younger generation towards not only lend a hand, but philanthropy and giving back on the whole. Do you feel that as we look at youth development, because that's one of the major hot topics here now, the youth development or some sort of centralized youth program, should it be mandatory should philanthropy or giving back or community service be mandatory and in an excessive amount? Shar.
I've been toying with this idea for a while because some research shows that if you push kids to volunteer and they don't want to be there, they can sometimes be more of a hindrance than a help. But on the flip side, if they don't really get an opportunity to experience certain philanthropic acts, then they might not ever know what it feels like to give back. So I think having even like a 5-hour minimum, or just something where the school or the community program would say
Just 5 hours?
At least to get your feet wet, like per year type of thing.
Okay.
Instead of, I know some places it's 10 hours per year or more, but just something, at least if the school is like taking a field trip somewhere to do a beach cleanup and everybody gets to experience that.
Nice.
Or they're go to walk the dogs at the Humane Society or something like that. Those are helpful things.
Let me
that
know
they
things
might
on my
actually
face
enjoy.
that because I think that's important. I like the beach cleanup aspect.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. For me, honestly, if it wasn't mandatory, I might never have done service and I might never be involved in what I do now.
It was mandatory for you?
Yeah. Well, for high school, for example, you had to do 40 hours at my high school.
Okay.
So 10 hours, or it could be all done in 1 year.
Yeah. It's just 40 hours to graduate over 4 years.
Okay.
Like, come on, 10 hours. And you could really document anything. But, my mother was a big proponent and my father was a pastor. My mother was a nurse. So 2 professions were kind of service as part of it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, but growing up, you always want to be a little counterculture as a priest kid. And, I didn't necessarily, want to always, my mother would love to go take us to the community garden. She says, you're coming with me. You're going to help out. It's a local soup kitchen. They have a garden. We're going to help clean it. I'm like, Mom, it's on a Saturday morning. Like everyone else is going to the beach. Everyone else is doing this. Why do I have to do this at 7 a.m.? And to be honest, I really enjoyed it as a kid. And I met the staff that worked there, some of the other volunteers, and I started realizing like there's this sense of like community as well. And so I think a lot of volunteers that I've recruited to help with projects, sometimes they find themselves or they find kind of belonging even.
Mm-hmm.
So there's even I always say like there's actually benefits obviously for the charity, but there's a lot of benefits for a person to be a volunteer. Right, to not be being paid for something, to be giving back. And for me, like it eventually moved me even towards the career path I went on to get more involved in fundraising and working with nonprofits. But I would never have done that had there hadn't been a nudge from my high school and my mother. But yeah, I do think there's a degree, but I don't think it should be, overly forced or some ridiculous number.
Right.
I think but I do think kids need a taste of it. And especially it depends on the community you're from. It depends on your family. Like my family was a big reason I think I turned out the way I did.
Okay.
But for some folks, for some kids that aren't surrounded by that kind of a family that sees service as a pivotal part of what makes a person a person, I think having a little bit of a requirement can be helpful. But the jury's still out.
Okay. So you guys have been involved in other philanthropic acts for you said a decade. How long have you been giving back?
I mean, my whole life really, and then
your whole life
in a way in the community. I mean, growing up, my parents were always helpful toward neighbors and doing different small acts of kindness. I would volunteer at the Legion tea and bazaar events, serving tea or different things like that. I started working in high school. I don't think I did official volunteer work, like I wasn't with an agency or anything like that. Sheila Pritchard laughs when she remembers me coming into Lignum Vitae, which was the organization that merged with Lend a Hand when Lend a Hand started, because it was the year I had left teaching and I was kind of doing some online, different writing contracts, doing some freelance work. And because I've been teaching for so long, teaching kind of has that built-in, it's almost like a volunteer job with a stipend kind of thing when you're in the early stages sometimes. And it does have that element of giving back. Every day I go to work, I feel like I've done something positive. So when I all of a sudden was not teaching, I went into Lignum Vitae. I said, I need to do something to give back. I feel like there's this void where I'm not fulfilling my role. Like there's something missing. I need to find a way to help and do something in the community. And so that's how I got involved with Lignum Vitae at the time. And it wasn't too long after that the merge happened. I think within that year or so.
Because it was Lane inviting 4-H and then Lendahan.
Yeah. So basically, while we were building their first center,
4-H.
I met Sheila and others involved, and I said, "Wow, this is so great! You're so passionate about programming. Not that we weren't passionate, but they really had something great with the 4-H program and with Mitzi as well helping, and other folks that were helping at the board." And I said, we're trying to do the same thing. And for me, my passion and my talent was more the fundraising side, and trying to connect people and be a facilitator. That's how I've always seen myself. And so for her, it was all about the programming. I said, this is perfect. We should work together. Why would we, this is not that big of an island.
Right. Let's not compete.
Not even compete, but like, why not? Yeah. I mean, why split resources? Why,
right.
Like we could have a much better impact together. And that's been true. I mean, I think together we've been able to really not only, build a nice building, but have, great consistent programming that can always get better and will, but, have something great right out of the gate rather than kind of trying to piece things together.
No, because I remember where it was when you guys were separated, right? And it is absolutely night and day. Not to say that anybody on their own was bad, but uniting all those smaller pieces.
Yeah, I think we were both also just ramping up at that time, right? Like Sheila didn't start that long ago.
Yeah,
and
it was just both organizations were in the beginning stages, and it just made sense.
And we started, so we did a test a little bit. So we actually funded, London actually funded a bit of Lignovites, some programming to start, and that was on purpose because why would we build a building to just build a building? We're building a building because we know that with it, we can have an impact on the kids. You can't have an impact on the kids with a building. You need programming.
Yes.
And so for that was as we were fundraising, as we were building, it was, okay, let's also be building up, the programming. And so that was the point of that. And I think it worked pretty well.
So throughout your tenure with various charities, I'm sure you've seen some really sad things and you've seen some rewarding things. Flip the coin. What's the most sad, violent, thing that you've seen, and how did you help to solve that problem? And what's the most rewarding thing that you've done? Oh, you've seen.
Rock, paper, scissors.
You can go.
Ladies first.
Yeah, ladies first.
One thing that actually one of the first experiences when I was volunteering with Lend a Hand, and we had I cannot think off the top of my head the water organization that came in with the water filters, and we were going around
during the Hurricane Dorian.
Yeah, it wasn't Hurricane Dorian. It was a hurricane before that. Maybe we were still Lignovites at that point.
Yeah, I don't think it was.
Or maybe it was. But we had a water filtration donation, and we were showing people how to work these water filters. So you could literally take water from a mud puddle, put it through this filter, and make it drinkable.
Yeah.
And
I remember that contraption.
Yes, and it was brilliant.
No, it was good. It was good.
It was great, and we were distributing them and showing people how to install them and rinse them out and make sure they maintain them, etc. And we were just doing these simple things, and we went to this church service, and we were talking with some kids afterwards, and I literally had, within 10 minutes of working with this group of kids, I had a girl come up to me and say, "Could you adopt me?" I was like, why would you say that? And it was just she felt like I had shown her genuine kindness, and she just didn't feel like her family wanted her. And so to me, who asks to be adopted? Who asks a stranger to be adopted? That was just such a strange feeling for me, and it just made me aware of the level of kind of desperation that some kids are growing up in. And so I guess that was probably a sad moment for me. What did I do about that in particular? I just kept on trying to help reach as many kids as possible through Lend a Hand, through other work, and hope to make a difference in the grand scheme of things.
I'll keep my good and bad. Actually, I have plenty, but I think I'll keep it to the Bahamas. And I will say my good. My good would be, we have a young man at the center named Frederick, who I've known him since maybe he was 12, maybe when we were starting out. I met him, we did, little camps together. And, he was always a great kid, always smart, always looking for more, hungry for opportunity. And he's been in our program consistently. Mitzi's worked with him tremendously. Others have stepped in, other staff and other volunteers. And he's just a really nice kid. And fast forward, he just got a job recently through us and with Brent Chapman and David Kasoy at Hurricane Hole.
Okay.
They become supporters, and they said, hey, we will be happy to consider some of your kids for employment. And they consider Frederick. They took him on, they trained him up, and he trained very fast, apparently, and he's done extremely well. He's been working on the fuel dock there. Now they even have him, I believe, doing other tasks as well that were even beyond what he originally signed up for. But I just saw him. I came to the center 2 days ago, and I see an ice cream truck there. And I was like, what is this ice cream truck for? Who's getting ice cream right now? And apparently I see Mitzi and the staff all outside, and the kids had left from camp, but they're all sitting there eating ice cream. I was like, who got you this ice cream? Like, well, Frederick came by and got it for us. Because this is a young man who, has his own story of what he's been through, but he came back and he always comes back and asks Miss Mitzi, how can I help? What can I do? Wanting to actually support our programs because now he's like, I'm making money. I just bought you ice cream off of my tips. That was the joke he said. And so for me, I love seeing that because like that is a really great example. And we have other stories like that. But, I love that, some people grow up in a community, they go through a tough time and they want to get out of there and never look back. And for him, he's doing well. He wants to keep living in the community. He's making a living. He's giving it back to his family, to himself, even to the people that helped get him where he is. He's grateful. That's been a great story. Sad story actually involves Lendahead as well. But recently, a few weeks ago, a young man was killed. He was involved in our electrical program. We usually close. Mitzi's supposed to close a little earlier, but she likes to stay. And kids love, like Sharleen said, it's a safe space. Safe space with internet and, AC, obviously. Yeah.
Who wants to go home?
Who wants to go? No one wants to go home. She has to go, all right, guys, it's time. It's 9 o'clock. Like we were supposed to close at like 6 or 7. We closed at like 7. And so this young man just finished the electrical program and he said, oh, can we stay a little longer? And at that point, it was even later. It was like 8:30 or something. And Mitzi was like, I got to go. And I feel bad saying the story, Mitzi, don't cry. But, it's a really sad story in the sense that, that day he handed Mitzi his resume because she had another job opportunity lined up and he had gone through our process. He was ready to go. And she was going to send the resume the next day for him for this job that he could then get. He left and he went and he was playing dominoes literally just down the street on another block or 2 blocks away. And there was someone going by trying to hit somebody else and he got caught in the bullets and he died. He was 20 years old. So that's sad to me. And honestly, it's even sadder because I knew him not super well, but I knew him. I knew he was in our programs. I knew he was a good kid. But like when I see kids in the community who I know aren't as good of kids and they're distraught. I mean, they are so upset because they're like, that probably could have been us. Like that probably should have been us over him. That's what they kept saying to me. Like he was he was a good kid. Like we were not always good kids. He was always a pretty good kid. So for me, that's just sad to just see life like snuffed out like that. And especially when he had so much opportunity. Right. And so it's sad, but it's also
on the peak of getting a break as well.
Yeah. And that's just, and I've seen him in pictures with the electrical program that he's loved and guys from that program are getting jobs. And so it's kind of sad. I mean, obviously it's emboldening too. It makes you want to work harder. It makes us want to move faster because, failure's not really an option. Right. You see that like everyone keeps talking about crime rate and no matter where you live in Nassau or if you're a visitor, you're concerned with the crime rate, but a lot of that crime is happening in that general vicinity of where we're trying to help
and helping to correct, those social ills, those, I wouldn't even say social ills, those, social myths or undereducation or literacy or opportunity given an alternative helps to correct that deviant behavior.
Well, and kids are looking at Frederick, for example, as a role model now. So a bunch of little kids came to Mitzi and said, how do we get a job like that? Because they see him like now.
They want to buy ice cream with their tips.
But
that's as simple as that is.
But it feels out of reach for them until they see
someone does it
actually in their community doing it.
And he's happy. Like he's talking to the younger kids. Like the other day we had a talk about investing and saving. I was like, okay, now you're making money. What are you doing with it? He's like, I'm trying to save it. I'm like, good. Okay. And then we took it a step further. I'm like, are you going to think about investing some of it eventually once you get more? He was like, oh, I probably should. So now he's talking with
right now it's the whole wave is investing over saving.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, because of inflation, right?
Right.
So we talked about that, and I was talking about the inflation rate with him. He's like, oh, and he linked him up with another person who's helped out as a volunteer, who's an accountant, to talk more about actually some real investment options for him in his current situation. But that's important. Like, how do you actually get out of your situation? It can't just be saving right now, like 1% rate or whatever it is.
And ain't even
less. Ain't
even that.
Yeah. So, anyways, those are good and bad.
Oh.
So I said a sad, but I would say that the good happen quite often. And like just the relationships that you build with the kids that you work with, that you then continue to watch them grow and thrive and do good, whether you see them all the time or not. Like there was a girl who I met when she was 10 or 11 years old, came up through the Lend a Hand program, went on to, I helped her with a scholarship, you helped her with a scholarship, went on to do great things and continues to do great things. And she continues to be a big part of my life. Like she actually comes and babysits my kids and, we are always in communication. So even though I don't see her all the time, she knows that she is an integral part of our lives. It wasn't just a one-off, I'm doing this for some glory. It's like, I actually want to help these kids. And to me, I'd rather spend money on helping kids than spending money on security systems and gates and all of the after effects of crime or things that could happen.
As a community, all of us, are we doing enough?
No, I don't think so.
I don't think we'll ever actually do enough.
What more can we do? What aren't we doing?
So not just the Bahamas, but other places where I work in helping with fundraising and again, Bahamas, I'm just a volunteer with Lend a Hand. But, I do see a lot of people and a lot of individuals that I've worked with who, could be doing more. And it's just not a top priority for them because they haven't been, seen it directly. Like when I take people to the community center and they meet the kids and they see the opportunity, a lot of them just read a headline in the newspaper and they're sitting behind maybe closed gates or, high security. And they're like, well, another person died. This is terrible. Country's falling apart. Close the newspaper, go to the beach. And so there's definitely more people can be doing. Like even like lately, like companies. Like I know some companies who they tell me, times are bad right now.
Right.
But when you think about it, I'm like, well, but zoom out. Like if you've been doing business for, 60 or 70 years, you've done okay. Yeah. Most likely if you're still around. Yeah. So I'm like, think about your legacy, not just about the present day. Like, don't just think about your philanthropy as it's bad right now, our marketing budget's lower. Like, think about what you can do as a whole to actually make a difference. And don't just do, a sponsorship for an upcoming event, but think about like a multi-year commitment to actually allow an organization or any project to actually be able to implement it and be consistent. That's the biggest thing is I see so much here, and no matter where I go, of these one-off programs where a company says, okay, here's $1,000 for your upcoming auction or this event, and that money just gets burned up. And what's the show for it? And so it's rather, I think, a lot of individuals and companies should be also thinking about how nonprofits operate. Everyone looks at a nonprofit and they're like, well, nonprofits should have extremely small marketing budgets. Don't you dare spend money on marketing, and don't you dare pay staff, right? Like that's it. Like people expect nonprofits to have the skills and all the marketing materials like a for-profit does, but spend like 1/100th of the cost.
Because I think they look at it as, again, this luxury thing. So they think it's all kept women whose husband has like $60 million somewhere stashed away, and they have no need for it, but it's volunteers, people from the community sometimes, like you said, just coming in and helping out.
The biggest thing is staff too. Like that's one thing whenever I work with a charity, and it's really hard to fundraise for operations and for staff, but people don't realize that you could have an amazing sewing program, but if you don't have a good instructor or you can't pay your administrative director, charity will cease to exist because you can't implement it. It's like, that's a big problem too, that I think philanthropy as a whole, that's been an age-old problem, but I think it's getting worse. And I think younger donors too, I point to myself, I guess I'm still young as a 30-year-old. Yes. But younger people too are like, oh, how much of my $100 went to administrative? Oh gosh, not $2.
Question. Obvious, can NGOs, like with donations, can there be portions of it that are invested so it at least compounds in a way, or you can't do that?
Yeah, you can do that. And that's what like an endowment is.
Mm-hmm.
So like one thing like for Lend a Hand, like my goal with Lend a Hand one day is to get, $20-30 million endowment where usually it's 4 to 7% a year.
Mm-hmm.
You take out and you put that, you spend it,
Mm-hmm.
but you keep the corpus in there. That's invested in perpetuity. Like you see some big academic institutions have endowments, et
Right.
cetera. But like that money is invested. But besides that, you can, like some people will put, like if you have a good amount of money in checking, sometimes the charity will move that into like a CD
Okay.
for a certain amount of time.
Right.
But yeah, otherwise you don't usually try to play the market as a nonprofit. You're usually more conservative, but that's where an endowment comes into play.
Okay.
And you set a policy as a group. You agree as an investment committee. You say, this is what we're comfortable with this kind of charity. And depending how old you are too, right? If you're only a 2-year-old charity, you're probably not going to be investing money. But if you've been around for 10 years plus, then you start getting that habit of how do we make sure this is around forever, no matter who changes on staff, board, etc.
Okay.
As the non-host, can I ask a question?
I knew it was going to come at some point.
For sure.
Every single time I invite this woman on any of my programming, she tries to take over the show. But go ahead, ask the question.
Yes. The difference between fundraising in the US versus fundraising here, where there's tax incentives in the US,
Mhm.
and we don't have tax incentives for donations here in the same way.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah. So it's kind of a misconception that a lot of folks believe that the biggest reason people give is for a tax advantage in the US. That's not true. It's top 5, but it's
Let's
actually
say top 3. Let's say top 3.
maybe. But so most people in America, the average income, are taking a standard deduction on their taxes. So unless they are actually giving a lot,
True.
it's not going to make a different They're not going to itemize.
It's not on the average for the average person.
For the average person, they're not. So once you get above a certain income level,
Yeah.
start making sense. Like
Yeah.
when you're making, a good amount of money, then you have folks, that's when I get calls from accountants like, okay, so-and-so has $10,000 left to give this year, $25,000 because he sold an asset, right? That comes into play. But I'm saying like the average gift, someone giving you $50, generally those donors, they were not giving it saying, I'm going to get a huge tax hit. But I will say it's almost created this like psychological effect though, where people do think like that, even in America, where they're like, well, make sure you send me my tax receipt. And I'm like, you're probably not going to itemize, but okay, here you go. And
is it a pain to do that? With the tax receipt, like
it's a simple thing that every charity you have to do it over a certain amount, but generally charities will do it for any amount, just out of kind of good faith stewardship. But there are other reasons people give. It depends, like their proximity to the cause, what type of cause is it? They have some kind of relationship to it. They give for prestige. Many people, like you look at,
because it's all in a way dependent on the situation, dependent on the cause. It's kind of built-in marketing
for them.
For companies,
but many
for
people,
companies, for states.
Some big people don't want the recognition too, because they don't want to be targets.
But those are the legitimate donations. Some people say, okay, so remember Dorian, right? Remember all those pledges that came in. Oh, I'm going to pledge you 1.5 million. I'm going to do this. And when it came down to collect, it was like crickets. It was just, got you a headline, maybe a write-up on some blog or whatever, got you some hits. Oh, you're a great person. Nothing capitalized.
Yeah.
Has that happened to you guys?
To lend a hand? No, not really.
That means you have great donors.
Yeah, we do. And we've done a really good job, and they've been amazing in stepping up and helping, and also influencing each other.
Right.
I mean, it's been a great, really peer-to-peer type effort. A lot of our fundraising, in the sense that, they see someone give, someone led by example, and they say, okay, this is a good group. Like that's the problem with some charities. There's so many charities in the Bahamas that sometimes it does take somebody leading the charge that other people say, okay, this must be good if so-and-so is giving. So like,
and that's the flip side, like where
we are very cliquish here. We are very cliquish.
You're saying, some people do it for prestige or whatever. There's also the level of, if I don't say anything, then other people may not follow suit. If somebody knows that they have some influence over others and they say, I made, a $500,000 donation to XYZ, then other people might be like, oh, well, if they're doing that, I need to up my game.
Yeah. You
too.
also
So-
have the flip side of it, though. Sometimes people say, well, they just got a big donation. They don't need my help. Right. So
That's another thing.
it's a balancing act.
Do you
Yeah.
guys, if you do get a big donation, is it harmful to kind of put the dollar amount out there if you
Yeah.
have a particular goal in mind?
It depends. Yeah. It depends on what you're trying to raise.
Right.
But I've been erring more on the side of I like to put the amounts because I think it is important to see if the donor is okay with it. That's the big thing.
Mhm.
Is the donor okay with the amount? If not, please let us use your name. If not that, like announcing anonymous gifts does nothing. You might as well just not even announce it. We have an anonymous gift of $500K. Everyone's like, sure you do.
Really?
So, yeah. People are like, anonymous gift. There are all the times donors I've worked with that are critical or questioning, like if a charity announces, I got a 50K, I will do fundraising campaigns, one that wants to be anonymous and one that wants to use their name. I'm telling you, every time with the name, we raise far more. The anonymous one is usually maybe a few token gifts, but nothing serious. The name though, I'll have someone say, so-and-so did that. Count me in. Whatever he gave, I'm in for it. I'm like, it's this much. Oh, okay, fine. So
Really?
yeah, the name matters.
Do they think that it's the NGO playing games by saying, okay, I got this amount?
There's
or whatever?
like even government oftentimes, like in nonprofits, there's a lack of trust. And that's, again, younger generation, even worse than my parents or grandparents. There was a level of trust. Like you gave to a big renowned charity, you believe they're going to do the best thing with it, right? Now is much less trust. So that's the problem when you see the things like that. They're like, are they really doing that? You know, is it really a donor behind it or not?
Or is it really going in where they say it's supposed to go?
Yeah.
So with you guys, what you've collected, you could see brick and mortar. There's a center that's breaking ground. You see the programming. You guys were a part of the feed-in program. What else are you guys into?
We're into everything. No, one big thing we want to talk more about, I think, and I'm just floating this out. We didn't talk about it as a board or anything, but getting more down the road into health, because I think
which aspects of health?
Just basic health, like making sure that folks are going or maybe incentivized, I don't know, but going to get checkups.
Okay.
Making sure they have access. Because everyone's like, oh, the hospital's so busy, I'm not going through that, or I'm not going to that clinic. There's a huge line.
So it's similar to something, because I know Lenny Kravitz does I think either yearly, the dental clinic.
The dental, yeah. So making sure that, especially what we're trying to do is really hone in on the folks in our programs, because if you just keep throwing it out here to this group and that group, you can't really track it. You can't really see progress. And so now as we expand, from 200, 300 kids, with the 2 new locations, hopefully up to like 600 or so kids and families, really, not just the kids, because then the families involved, trying to think of programs to make sure that we're looking at, and I think especially like women's health, I think that's huge.
Yeah, definitely.
The young women in the community and the moms and the grandmas, like they are in the Bahamas, they're the figureheads, right? They are the driving force around a lot of the decisions for the kids. And so making sure, obviously, that we look at health there. One thing I've been part of a lot in America is looking at I work a lot with the diaper bank, for example. There's no diaper bank in the Bahamas that I know about.
A diaper, like diapers for babies.
Like for folks that, can't afford diapers, like that's a huge cost, as you all probably know.
Yeah.
And it's a huge cost. And, if you can't afford it, it creates a bit of a mental toll of you worrying about such a basic item, but it does create that toll. And so I've worked with a lot of groups in America where, just providing that diaper has allowed folks to free up resources to then use on other things like food, medical treatment, et cetera. So even that I'm looking at, partnering maybe with folks in the States to say, you have these large diaper banks. Would you consider helping support a smaller operation here that we can use with some of the families? So that's related a bit to health, but that's definitely health is one big area. And then obviously the hydroponic project, I think, is a really cool initiative. The fact that we're dropping a pod in the community. So we're going to actually have this containerized growing system right in the heart of the community.
Are you partnering with anybody with that, or?
No, not really. I do a project like that in the States, my brother and I. So we have that.
What don't you do
background? Yeah. So that's been fun, but it's going to be a cool project. And I really think the kids are going to love it. They're going to learn a lot about sustainable ag. And we have a director who's running that now too. So a lot of good things.
Now with NGOs and philanthropy, we always have the 1%, the elite, the politicians. Have they been a hindrance to you guys? Have they been a helpful hand? Because I got some sway I can help y'all guys. What's up? What's up? Are they on board? Are they a pain in the...
We are separate and apart from the government organizations,
Good.
and we will remain such.
Yeah, I will say though, like obviously the feeding program was a government program.
Okay.
And we stepped up a little reluctantly at first because, you know, we realized that we could have a role and help.
Okay.
We didn't see it as like, oh, we're going to get all this money. Yay. We raised far more than, we raised not far more, but we raised, you know, what was it, at least 2 million or so, 1 to 2 million in additional dollars that we spent on the program. It wasn't just all government money. So that's important to note.
You guys raised $2 million more than what was allocated for you guys.
Yeah, I believe it was between 1 and 2. Exactly. Don't quote me, but it's in that range.
In that range.
Yeah.
But it's still a considerable
Yeah, we
amount.
had amazing donors stepping forward from all over that wanted to help privately. So we didn't go into that, you know, oh, you know, let's go after the government for some great support and great money. We didn't see it like
more
that.
Just stepping up because the infrastructure was in place, and
Yeah,
it was
and for us as well, it's not like the platform that we have and that we're building. You can't ignore government, nor do we intend to ignore. But you know, a lot of the programs we do, you know, we tend to collaborate more with private individuals, private, you know, foundations, et cetera, churches, organizations. But I think it's important. Like for example, the MP from Grantstown has been helpful. Mr. Wade Watson.
Yeah, Wade is pretty cool.
He's great, and he came by, and I had a quick chance to chat with him. But he's been actually very helpful for Mitzi and for the center for issues that we're having. Say, you know what, you guys are doing good work. Let me make sure that, you know, we can have, you know, your water is having an issue. Let me look into that for you. Whatever it is, he has been helpful. And so I think it's important for whatever you're doing. You can't just ignore, especially constituency governments, but, you know, making sure that you guys are working together, you know, on a common issue, because they have their own plans, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then perhaps we have our own plans, but a lot of that is similar.
Yeah.
And so making sure you're not duplicating too much.
Right.
So I think it's good to be at least in communication for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think the reason I say we keep it separate is historically there have been times where a government project starts under one government and then, you know, something happens and then that project
they have an
gets
attitude and they change
and then it's so just for continuity, it's just, you know, good relationships all around, but not
that's smart to keep yourself independent from them and not dependent on them. That's my philosophy. I've never wanted to be dependent on the government for anything. If there's a contract I could bid on, sure. If I could help out in some way, shape, or form, great. But I don't want you ever to be able to be in a position to dictate to me or yuck the rug from under me.
Yeah.
So
and that's why most of our funding sources are individuals, companies, foundations.
Okay.
That's 99% probably all of our money. Like those are the buckets, with individuals probably leading the way.
Okay.
And that's good because, you know, it's a little more sustainable, right? If you just wrote grants, for example, and the grants ended, you know,
Hold on 1 second. 99%. Individuals.
I would say 99% of our funding is individuals strategically, right? Because it's much more sustainable versus charities that start out, you know, very grant heavy. For example, you know, one disaster happens, the foundation says, hey, you know, we're not doing, you know, human service support anymore. We're doing the arts. And that charity's like, oh crap, how do we fill that hole of $100K we were getting from that one entity, right? So same thing with the government support. You know, you don't want to be relying on any one individual. You don't want to be relying on any one entity. So that's something that I'm always thinking about as we fundraise too.
So Landahan Bahamas is arguably here to say you guys have been doing a lot of great work. You've evolved, you've expanded. How can we as a community help you? What do you need?
Well, there's a few different ways, and it's not just money. I know you're waiting for me to say money.
No, I'm not.
But no, I mean, one obvious thing, we could start with money, but we are always fundraising. But I will say, like I said earlier, we are looking for people that want to make a consistent difference.
Okay.
If you want to come and give, you know, $10 one time, if that's all you can do, great, we'll take it. Of course, it'll be helpful too. But like maybe consider that, okay, I'll do $10 a year for 3 years, right? Like I'm trying to get folks that are committed, that want to grow with us, see it as more of an investment,
right?
Not just as, you know, a token donation. That's really important. So obviously beyond that, volunteering, right? We have a lot of volunteers. We have, you know, at least a few hundred a year. We have groups come from abroad to volunteer a ton. And then spreading the word. Like the other day I met with a potential donor and he says, oh, Landahan, I've heard of you. And he's brand new to the island. He's only been here for like a few months.
That's how strong the brand is.
Yeah, and we're like, oh,
that's
wow.
how your brand is.
Yeah, he's like,
very strong.
I've heard good things. I'm like, okay, that's good to hear. But so, and so, like I said, giving money, obviously, or coming, maybe there's a certain interest you do have that might be interesting to talk about, volunteering and spreading the word. I mean,
and in-kind donations.
In-kind donations. And actually, sorry, one more would be if you have a local company and you like to find some great labor, we have the unique opportunity because we work with these kids and families every single day, pretty much. We can really vet and find good candidates for different jobs that exist. So that's another great opportunity that some folks want. They're always looking for good labor and folks to help out.
Oh, interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to give you guys a final word. Outside of the in-kind or the money, speak to one singular person. That person may have no experience with philanthropy, charity. Inspire them to get involved. I'll let you leave with that word. Let's see how inspiring Miss Hanson is. Let's see the teacher.
Inspiring.
Let's see the teacher in her.
Oh, gee. I mean, everybody has within them the capacity to help someone else. You don't have to have any special training. You don't have to have any special background. Literally, those random acts of kindness, those small things that you can do can create a ripple effect. And so there's really no act that is too small. And I think if we do all just be the change that we want to see, it's a Gandhi quote, and just recognize that we do have an impact. I saw something the other day that was just like a little clip on Instagram. Everybody worries about changing the future if they go back in time in these movies and stuff, like, oh, don't move this because that could have such a lasting impact in like Back to the Future or whatever. But in real time, we don't see that these little things can actually have a massive impact in the future. But I think we just need to be more cognizant of those small actions and be more intentional about the way we live our lives day to day. So,
what about you, Lucas?
I'm inspired. For me, it's like my whole life, like I said, my professional career has been helping really nonprofits fundraise, market. And I'll say to me, like, I had one donor once say to me, he's like, oh, you do fundraising? What a dirty job. And I was a dirty job, really? And he's like, yeah, you have to go out there and beg people for money. And a lot of people associate, nonprofits even like that they beg for money. For me, I've never seen it that way. I see that, when you work with a nonprofit or you volunteer even, like, and you want to spread the word about it, you're bringing an opportunity to someone. Like, I've always seen myself as, like I said before, a facilitator and somebody who can bring a great opportunity. And if their vision and their interests align with ours and what the organization is trying to do, then it's a happy marriage and we can move forward and achieve great impact together. But so I think it's definitely that, realizing yourself, like, as you might get involved with a nonprofit, not just as a staff member, but as even a volunteer, that you are now an ambassador for that entity. Hopefully you align with your vision, your mission, but that you're bringing opportunities to people. You shouldn't be bashful, right? A lot of times I try to encourage other people to fundraise for different causes. Mm-hmm. And I always encourage them, like, listen, you are just the messenger, right? You're not holding the gun to anyone. You are simply bringing a really amazing project or an organization, and you're bringing that to someone who might have an interest, and feeling them out and hearing them out and seeing their questions and their comments, and then maybe adapting your methods and what you're doing. But I think that's a big thing, is to see yourself as a bit of a facilitator always when you get involved.
All right. This has been another great episode. Thank you guys for coming on. I know it was like, oh my God, we're going on to his show. What is he going to do? Is he going to cost us our brand? No, it was a great conversation. Less
controversial than I thought. So
no, it wasn't controversial. I think everybody should get involved in some way, shape, or form. I never looked at any of the quote unquote kind acts that I did as philanthropy. I just did it because it was just the right thing to do at that particular point in time. Mm-hmm. So, I hope more people could step up and be that light for somebody else, and especially doing it when you don't know who's watching you and who's inspired by that kind act. So this has been a great episode of the Full Gambit podcast. You're always welcome to come back, maybe in a more controversial, controversial conversation. If you want to blast somebody, come on, feel free. All right.
Do unto others, Jay. Come on.
Right. Anyway, thank you guys for coming. See you.
Cheers.